I was in front of her husband 2 days later.
And I'll tell you what, we didn't call her on a fire truck, say yes.
Then I went back.
Oh, well, you would prefer that anyway.
Absolutely. They offered to pull the fire truck.
At the end of it, she said,
They made
umbrella in the car. Well, yes, George.
not like they did what you said.
I'm taping it. We'll see if it's going to work. They couldn't come.
They had a, they had a medical aid, and then there was another later call a little later.
What kind was one, even though it was Nancy, and kind of separate. And the DA gave me a break on something, but gave me those two. She said, Attorney Siegel was acceptable. Judge, 2 and 3 are, but 1 and 4, I'm inclined to make one not responsible so it doesn't mess up his license.
Yeah, I mean,
There were about 100 people in the courtroom because I was the first one called. She says,
Doesn't even say hi to me.
DA, what do you think? She says, I'll leave it at your discretion, Judge. I said, Judge, I'm only asking for one, not
Tom,
one.
if you all set? City Council Committee of the Whole met in council chambers on Wednesday, March 12, 2014 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the matter listed below. Notice of this meeting was posted on March 6, 2014 at 4:34 p.m. Currently, Councilor Sargent is absent. I think he's still on vacation. At this time, I recognize Councilor O'Keefe.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, members of the City Council, I've been advised by the city solicitor, because I have 2 sons that are employed by the fire department, that I must recuse myself from these deliberations, which I'm going to do, and I'm going to leave the chambers.
Let the record reflect that Councilor O'Keefe has recused himself. Thank you, Councilor. We have one matter before us this evening is order number 61, home rule petition. I'll read the order, well, part of it anyway. City of Salem City Council, January 23, 2014, ordered that a petition of the General Court accompanied by a bill as set forth below, removing police chief / city marshal and fire chief positions from civil service, notwithstanding the provisions of Chapter 31 of the General Laws, Chapter 245 of the Acts of 1924, or any other special or general law to the contrary, be filed with the attested copy of this order, and hereby is approved under Clause 1 of Section 8 of Article 2 as amended. The amendments to the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to that end, the following legislation be adopted, except for the amendments by the Senate or House of Representatives which conform to intent of this home rule petition. An act exempting the police chief / city marshal and fire chief from civil service law. And then we have 3 sections that we can get into as we go along. With us this evening, we have a whole bunch of people. Welcome. The mayor, police chief, fire chief, various members of the police and fire departments. Dominic Pengala, the mayor's chief aide, new title, right? Okay. So the mayor's bringing forth this. So I've talked to a couple of people in the room. We'll let the mayor give her a presentation first, followed up by a statement from the police chief, then a statement from the fire chief, and then we'll open it up to the fire department union has a comment, and then the police union has a couple comments, and then we'll open it up to anyone else in the room that wants to make a comment. All right? So with that, Mayor Driscoll.
Thank you.
And I ask everyone if you could please turn off these devices, or at least silence them so we don't have these going off during the presentation. Yeah. Yes, it's on.
Are we using these guys, or are these off?
They're on.
Oh, they're on.
They're on.
Okay.
Yeah, they're recording.
Okay, got it.
And for the record, this is being recorded via this device in front of me, as well as we're trying something different. SATV couldn't be here. The cameras are on, they're in fixed position, so they're trying to pick it up. We don't know if it's gonna work, but we're gonna try it.
Great, thanks. So I appreciate everyone coming out and the opportunity to come before the council on this. It's certainly the opportunity for us to think about how we go forward, finding leaders for our public safety departments. I think it's an important issue. I'm glad there are so many folks here. I'm actually excited about some of the opportunities that we have to look at this a little bit different. This is not something that I think is unique to Salem. I think there's been council chambers looking a lot like ours looks tonight, debating this issue, trying to understand the impacts, and ultimately make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. And I think that's the approach we've certainly taken with regard to this as well. Let me just see if we can advance this. You may have to be the advance guy, Dominic, because I don't. So, as I said, this is not something that's unique. We're not the first community to raise this. There are lots of movements to remove chiefs. There's been a big movement for a number of years to remove chiefs from the civil service position. Lots of questions raised about it in this day and age. This is an article from Governing Magazine talking about just how difficult it is in this day and age to think about hiring your top cop or your top fire chief through a pretty antiquated system. This is pretty critical of the system. There are a lot of reports that also are similarly critical, and I think there's probably a lot of chiefs and others who operate within the civil service system who frankly have their own set of faults with it as well. It's not the easiest thing. It's not the best finance department. It's certainly its share of difficulty at all of the ranks, but when it comes to selecting the chief position, I really think there's some opportunities for us to do this in a much better way, both professionally in a way that I think will provide leaders for the future of these departments in a way that makes sense, given the challenges that we know these departments face and our community faces. So a quick outline of what we currently do. So internal candidates sign up for the test to be chief, either with an exam or assessment center. That's something that a local community can control. Only a set number of people can sit for the test. We've experienced this, frankly, here, that you can actually reduce opportunity within a department through a civil service test. If a particular rank, a number of folks sign up for the exam, it forecloses out anybody else from those lower ranks from participating. And then ultimately, the mayor appoints one of the top 3 scorers. There's no council confirmation. There's no community or legislative input. It really is a very different process. In terms of the way we select other department heads. When we think about the other staff positions that have come before this body for confirmation, that doesn't work. And frankly, it's not the most flexible. So one of the things that we've heard certainly is if it's not broken, don't fix it. I understand that is something that folks are concerned about. But I do think we, in Salem, try to pride ourselves in being a little more progressive, not actually waiting for things to break before we decide we want to fix it. I think we've been fortunate. We have 2 very well-run departments. We've had strong leadership in those places. That has not been the case everywhere, and I don't think civil service is a guarantee of that happening everywhere into the future. In fact, there probably isn't any guarantees, whether you stick with civil service or you go outside. But you want to try and give yourself the best position to put the top, most qualified person in those jobs, and I'm not sure civil service guarantees that. One drawback of civil service, frankly, is once you're in those positions, it's hard to get somebody out of civil service. There have been too numerous examples to mention of fairly egregious conduct and still conversations, discipline being overruled at the state level for some things that were pretty egregious. We haven't had that experience here, I'm thankful for, but there are many within the Commonwealth, and I think that is one of the drawbacks and certainly something that is of concern as we think about this going forward. So what's being proposed? We've got home rule petition legislation to remove both chiefs from the civil service. This is very similar to what other communities have done. In fact, about 75% of police departments no longer have their chiefs in civil service. I couldn't quite get the numbers for the fire department. It's a little harder to calculate, but in speaking with the chief and others, that trend is going up. It's becoming, frankly, more the norm to have a chief that's non-civil service than to have one that is. We've also proposed something to partner with the civil service removal. So I'm not standing before you asking you, hey, take it out of civil service. I'm as concerned as you are, and maybe other folks in this room, about some sort of boss hog mentality. I don't think I have it, but somebody else who sits in my seat could all of a sudden decide, hey, this is a great way to put friends in. We want to have a professional process. We've used an assessment center here for years, and we think a hiring ordinance allows for that. It allows us to set some criteria. What kind of skills are we looking for? What are those minimum qualification years of services? It doesn't foreclose out other ranks. I hate it if you've got somebody quality at a lower rank that wants to participate in a process in an assessment center and can't get to it because, oh, we had 4 captains sign up or 3 captains sign up. Nobody else below has an opportunity to come in. This would open up that process, gives us some more flexibility. Obviously, it would allow for more than just internal candidates. It would allow for external candidates. But one of the biggest factors, I think, is it provides a role for others. So it's not just the mayor or the assessment center. It's an opportunity for city council members, for community members, for members of both unions, both patrol, firefighters, and superiors, to play a role in helping understand what do we need in the next leader and how do we make sure we get that feedback as we think about bringing the next person in should there be vacancies. So another report, and there are numerous, that talks about how difficult it is to remove a police chief from civil service and the constraints that you're operating up, and why opening up the process in no way eliminates internal candidates. I really want to stress that. We do have lots of quality folks at lots of different levels, and I don't see that changing. I think we've got leaders that value investing in staff and personnel so that there are always going to be a healthy pool of people within our departments from where to choose from, and that's critically important. Internal candidates, I think, always have a leg up, frankly, in just about any position. Assuming you're not coming from some crazy world of a department that really needs a change. If you're on the ground, know the issues, qualified, that's always going to give you a leg up, and I don't want anyone in this room to take the fact that we're suggesting this be removed from civil service as some sort of slight to the people who are in the department. We've got quality people. So what doesn't change? I want to make sure that's clear too. Currently in Salem, the police chief and the fire chief are the appointing authorities. I don't appoint the police officers and firefighters new onto the force. We have a process, they're reviewed. I confirm those appointments. That's my only role, to sign off on them. The chiefs do. They meter out all the discipline. That's not the case in everywhere. Many mayors are the appointing authority. I don't think that makes sense. I pride myself on not telling either chief where to point guns, how to pull out hoses. That's not my job, and it's not my job to decide who should be on the department. We set high standards. We let the chiefs take that role on, and I think they've done a pretty good job with it. So that doesn't change. I want to make sure that's clear. So as I mentioned, we're definitely not the first one to take this on. 75% of the departments have removed their police chiefs from civil service. I don't think it's the right thing to do because you see all those dots on there. I think it's the right thing to do because why they did it. They're trying to professionalize operations. They don't want to limit candidates. They want the best for their communities. I think, frankly, we do as well. So why leave civil service? I touched upon this, but I want to make sure it's clear when we think about this selection and hiring ordinance process. We get to increase the quantity and potentially the quality of candidates. I do think we have lots of qualified folks, but you don't know what you're competing against when you talk about bringing in external candidates. It's definitely a more robust set of criteria for hiring chiefs. When we put the selection and criteria ordinance together, and it's just a proposal, it talks about minimum qualification of years. It talks about having 5 years of command staff. Thinking about, did somebody go for extra training, whether it might be the FBI Academy or something on the fire side that's akin to that as well. It opens up the hiring process to stakeholders, so it's not just the mayor. I've heard commentary that somehow this is some sort of power grab by me, taking these chiefs out of civil service. Couldn't be more contrary. In fact, this really broadens the ability for other people to weigh in and adds another step of a confirmation by the city council, things that we currently don't have. It allows for local control over local public safety departments, and what I mean by that is we decide what the selection criteria are, we decide what the hiring criteria are. Right now, Civil Service Commission controls a lot of things. Lists, who's on it, who comes down. If you don't want it and you want to bypass, you go over there. It's archaic, it's antiquated, it frustrates the hell out of people who have to deal with them, and why wouldn't we want to have some control over that locally? The current system is closed, a little bit more closed than we're talking about. I know, I'll use Bob St. Pierre as an example because he's not here. He was a lieutenant when he was pulled out to be a chief. In our last go-round with our selection, lieutenants couldn't even participate in the assessment center because we had a number of, the right number in the captain's ranks that participated for closing out everybody else. What the selection process that we've outlined does is it says not only does it open it up to anybody who meets minimum qualification, years of service, some command experience. If you're an internal candidate from Salem, you are guaranteed a role on the assessment center. You are going to participate in the assessment center if you submit your application and you meet those minimum qualifications. There's no, well, we already had 3 of this or 4 of that sign up, so you can't participate. You're in. And that's good whether you're interested in being the next chief or you're interested in being the next chief. Because assessment centers are tough. It's a real rigorous process to elicit what are the top qualities, what are the candidates expected to do, how are they going to perform. And we want folks who may not quite be ready to participate in that process. You only grow from that. It's a great professional development opportunity. Now you're allowed to participate in that in a way that you aren't currently. We think it brings out more merit, more experience, more skill at the forefront of hiring. It's not just about who happened to take the right exam at the right time and there happened to be an opening. The people in this room know there's a combination of skill and luck that comes with being in a promotional, that comes with being promoted. The right time, the right opening, did you take the right test, and it all needs to come together. And sometimes it doesn't for really quality people, and we want to make sure we're trying to widen the opportunity, not just for internal, but certainly for external as well, and that merit and experience can have a chance to rise to the top. And again, that last piece about all internal candidates. I think one of the benefits of a contract position is that if it's not working out, you're not there forever. There are chiefs that have had 1-year contracts. There are chiefs that have had 3-year contracts. There are chiefs that have had 5-year contracts. It gives the community a little bit more local control. You can be a probationary chief in your first year, so everyone can sort of try it before they buy it. It creates some flexibility in a way that you don't have in the current process. So some folks have talked about, hey, is it safer? You know, how does this impact crime? I'm using police here because I think it's a little bit more difficult, frankly, to pull in some of the fire statistics. And the answer is I have no idea if having a police chief in civil service or non-civil service makes the city safer. In fact, I think crime rate, what impacts that can be such a range of issues, it's silly to even think about it. But we did want to pull out, because some people have mentioned this, some of the experiences in other places. Property crime rates, you're not seeing differences in places that have civil service chiefs or not, or certainly not seeing crime going up. Again, I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that whether your chief is in civil service or not has some huge impact on crime, but there is some data that I thought was worthwhile. We looked at it in gateway cities as well, so places that might be a little bit more similar to us than the last slide. And again, you're not seeing, you're certainly not seeing upswings. And I don't want to make more of this than it is, but I just at least want to curry that piece of information out to folks. And that's what I just said. So I think the most important thing that I want to stress is we want to give our community a chance to compete for, attract, and hire the best candidates. We are a world-class city. We might be a small community in terms of size, and maybe even in population in comparison to other places, but we have a lot going on here. We have all the events in October. We have something here every weekend. We're a hot city from a public safety perspective. We're an attractive place, frankly, to lead because we're not some small podunk. And I think we want to be able to attract the best, and I think we probably could. And I think some of the best are in this room. I don't know that we want to limit it just to the folks in this room. And that may be a sharp difference of opinion, but that is a valid one. If we want the best, or do we just want the best of the people that we have before us that fall within a certain rank on any given day where there may be a vacancy? There's a lot of places that you can, periodicals, research material that you can take a look at that suggests that pulling this out of civil service really helps inform your ability to have the best leaders for the position. All internal candidates, not just the most senior officers, get a chance, and obviously talent that exists outside of the city would also have an opportunity. Pay impacts. So some of the conversations I've had, somebody mentioned, well, are we going to now be in this sort of race to pay? And so we did take a look at that. It's pretty clear there's a small bump up in non-civil service chiefs. What's hard to know is this a reflection of their educational incentive? Is this a reflection of the skill set of the person? But it's not certainly a significant difference where you saw non-civil service versus civil service chiefs having some big budget impact. So we wanted to cull that out and make sure folks were aware of that. Turnover, so we don't want to have a revolving door of chiefs. Certainly, we've benefited from having, frankly, chiefs that have been here for long periods of time. What we've seen from some of the work that we're looking at of the non-civil service chiefs versus civil service chiefs, really 76% had no change or less turnover, the places that had removed the chief from civil service. So it didn't become a place that had random people in and out. I think that's important too. Stability definitely matters. So old versus new. I thought it would just be helpful to walk through a comparison on what would be different between maintaining civil service and taking civil service out. So clearly we talked about the internal candidates, only internal candidates in civil service. Even if the list of internal candidates is limited because of rank, obviously with taking it out, you'd have not only your internal candidates, but also external candidates. Under the process we've laid out, so typically you'd see 3 to 5 candidates sign up to take the chief's test in the assessment center. I get to choose from the top 3. That's it, then you're confirmed. In fact, I think there's issues with civil service that could actually be more compromising than the selection process we laid out. It's not unheard of for a mayor to have a friend in the police department and want to have maybe one advantage over another within who they're selecting, even within the civil service process. And you don't even get to confirm. There's no community members reviewing that process. Under the process we've laid out, we've set up this public safety local advisory committee. There's more information in the council's been provided. It includes union reps. It includes a representative from the council. It includes a human service organization. So an organization that would probably work with some of the departments that are here, a public safety official, to have a review of that. We do set up an assessment center. We value the assessment center. We think that's a really good tool. Chief St. Pierre brought that in when he was here. Chief Tucker's maintained that. We use it at different ranks. We've used it in the fire department as well. I think we want to codify that. If we just pull this out of civil service and don't have a process laid out, there's no guarantee that anybody would even use an assessment center. So there are qualified contractors that help us with this. We've used them in the past to help shortlist the applicants. Again, all internal candidates who qualify get to go through that assessment center. Once that shortlist comes out, that public safety advisory committee goes to work. So the top 3 to 5 candidates, whatever gets pushed out of that assessment center, now go to meet with that public safety advisory committee. And that includes representatives that I mentioned before. They're going to give feedback. They're going to issue, I call it a report. I don't think it's a recommendation. I don't think it's a ranking. I think it's a chance to say, hey, we interviewed these people, and here's who we think would be a good fit. Here's some of the pros. Here are some of the cons. Here's where some of the skill sets we thought that might work in our particular community. Then they provide that list or that information to the mayor. I make the final appointment subject to council confirmation. Comes back in here. Again, something that we don't do currently. The criteria in terms of the old is a high school or GED to enter the civil service system. Then obviously you have that senior rank. And typically most of our folks who are in the senior rank have advanced degrees. It's not a requirement, though, that you have that to be chief. The Salem criteria we've laid out as part of the selection criteria. A minimum of a bachelor's degree, master's degree, or 4-year certainly could be preferred. I think we also have in there 5 years of command experience. The design certainly to give candidates from Salem and others with similar experience and the city our size, patrolling or working on a fire truck in a city our size, to give them a leg up, like you would with any position. You wouldn't hire a superintendent who hasn't had some experience in a district of your size or a makeup of your community similar. You wouldn't want to hire many of our department head positions without considering that relevant experience. So we tried to lay that out with this process as well. So at the table under the old process is really just me. I get to make it. I get to make the appointment. You know, we do an assessment center. I get to pick from the top 3, so there's a lot of discretion involved for whoever is in the mayor. I shouldn't say me. I should say the mayor. Whoever the mayor is gets to make that position. There's really nobody else at the table. Under the process that we've laid out, you can see there's an array of people who at least get to weigh in. The chances of somebody thinking they're going to appoint their buddy, you know, to the process, you got a lot of other people kind of having some eyes on this, and ultimately you have the city council who end up confirming it. Post-hiring. Look, it can be really difficult. Thankfully, praise the Lord, we have not had issues with chiefs that have had rogue behavior. There are lots of examples of other communities where that has been the case. And there are lots of examples of chiefs who have been terminated for something I think that's fairly egregious, and they get overturned by Civil Service Commission, and then they're back. And you want to talk about messy? Bringing back somebody who was let go for something that wasn't good, it can be really, really dicey. We haven't had that, thankfully. We don't certainly want to experience that ever. With Salem, if we took this out of civil service and followed selection criteria and a hiring process, you certainly have some ability to hopefully inoculate yourself from that. You have probationary periods that are allowable, and that can be helpful, frankly, in departments where the internal candidate does come up, becomes the chief, and maybe after a year it's not working out so great, you want the ability to bounce back. You also have an opportunity to put your contract in place. Maybe you don't want to marry somebody for 5 years that's coming in. That might be either internal or external. Maybe you want to think about limiting that time frame and seeing how it goes. It gives you the chance to do that while also providing protection. This is not meant to be the mayor, whoever it is putting the squeeze on the police or the fire chief. There are protections on that you can build into the contract that exist under state law. So I touched upon this earlier. It really, I think there can be flaws in the civil service process where, personal relationships can really matter with internal candidates. It's one person selecting out of the top 3. I think that's a lot harder to do when you're talking about a hiring and selection process that's both internal, external candidates. You're looking at merit, you're making it be a competitive process, and you're committed to finding the best. What I found interesting about this study and why we put this up is this was actually a study of chiefs. There were Massachusetts police chiefs that they surveyed and said, what do you think? And the significant majority of them said, look, we really don't think the chief's position should be in civil service anymore. And these were some of the comments that were part of that study. I'd be happy to provide that, or any of these, to folks who might be interested. It was pretty clear that many of the folks who had to work within it didn't support it. And I think also understood if you've been a chief, you understand the job. It's not like it was in the 1800s, when civil service was first created. We don't fight fires the way we did then. We don't patrol the way we did then. And frankly, we probably shouldn't be selecting police chiefs the way we did then. And I think who knows that better than the people who are in those positions? I think that this just really underscores what I just said. Everything else has changed in how you do your jobs. We probably want to think about changing how we select the person who's leading the public safety agency. I guess the last piece I want to make sure I leave you with, which is two more slides. You want to just roll through these, Dominic? So we've got just about a dozen senior staff within the city, varying degrees of responsibility. There are no other positions besides police and fire chief that we limit the selection to internal candidates. When we pick a new superintendent, we just don't say we're only going to interview the assistant superintendents, or when we pick principals, we don't say only the assistant principals can apply. Only local candidates. That really underscores, I think, who we are as a community. I think of Salem as being a welcoming. I didn't grow up here. Many of you know that. I didn't have the good fortune to be born here. I look around this room. There's other folks who didn't. I think we're welcoming. We typically like having expertise from other places. And there is a value system that goes along with this particular thing we're trying to do that says, we really want the best? Do we really want to welcome other people to the table who we think have strengths and abilities that can make Salem better, that might be able to make our departments better? Do we think our local folks can compete with that? I do. I've used this example in talking with some of you, and the chiefs here, when Paul Tucker was appointed chief, if we didn't have civil service, I think Paul Tucker would still be chief. It doesn't exclude qualified internal candidates. It just gives us the opportunity to seek and retain the best person for the job. One last slide just talks a little bit about some of the things that I think I want to make sure people don't walk away with, a feeling that this is about being pro or anti-union. Any chief, once they're selected, is not a member of the union. I pride myself on the relationships we have. We have our fistfights, we have our disagreements, but every single union rep got a call from us about this going in. This is not hostile. This is not acrimonious, in my opinion. I'm glad you're all here, so I've had a chance to talk with you about the why. I value the input we get from folks in this room, both about this process and why it's good, why it's bad, why you support it. Most of us, many of us, are union households. This, to me, is about how we do what's in the best interest of our city. I know why members of the union don't necessarily appreciate this. You have to look out for your union members. I think I have a responsibility to look out for the union members, but also for all the residents of Salem. I don't think this is about being unsupportive of Salem candidates. I actually think this gives us an opportunity to broaden the number of Salem candidates who can compete. And I think we have some good folks who can compete, and we'd encourage them to participate. It certainly isn't about mayoral control. I have a lot more control over civil service than I have over this process. I do think it's about, can we compete for and have the very best in our public safety positions? We are an attractive place. Folks would want to work here. And I think it's about whether we place value on the strengths and abilities of folks from outside Salem and whether we choose to welcome them to participate in the process. We just passed a non-discrimination ordinance and said we welcome everybody. We are a place that I think diversity thrives. I don't know why we'd want to shy away from that when we're thinking about hiring the leader of our public safety departments. These are $8.5 and $9.1 million budgets in charge of 80 to 90 personnel, lots on the line in terms of not only the jobs that they do, but the things that they prevent. And I hope you share my desire to have the best. And if the best is from Salem, that will come through in a process that allows this type of competition, this type of professional review, and ensures, I think, the good history that we've had in all of our departments, the strong leadership, to continue and to flourish. And I'm going to end there. I'm happy to take questions, but I want to make sure Chief Tucker has a chance, and I'll leave it up to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. For the mayor, leaves any questions for the mayor? You want everyone else first? Okay. Chief Tucker, please, sir.
Yeah, you got good eyes. I leave stuff in the Thank you.
Mr. President, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I realize that this is a difficult issue. I also realize that having 32 years in policing, that sometimes change is very difficult to accept, particularly in very tradition-bound law enforcement circles. But there's some important things that I think need to be said tonight, and I think you need to hear them from me. I took over as chief in October of 2009. And in November of 2009, I had my first disagreement with the mayor. And the mayor felt very strongly about something. It had to do with the communication and how we go forward with how we dispatch calls. It was a very important and serious issue. I had all of about 22 days as chief. And I went home that night and I talked to my wife. I said, I'm going to have a disagreement with the mayor, and I can't back down on this. And as a result, the mayor accepted my professional opinion, and we moved forward from there. And we never looked back. A couple of years later, we moved to civilian dispatches. We heard from both unions, particularly the patrol officers union, was adamantly opposed to it. After working, compromising, getting through it, we now have 5 professional civilian dispatchers who do an outstanding job. I think the discussion tonight should begin on the points that many of us agree on. We all agree we have an excellent public safety team in Salem. 32 years, I've seen our brothers and sisters in the fire service do extraordinary and courageous things. I'm also particularly proud of the work that the men and women of the police department do every day. Sometimes I marvel at the extraordinary work that they do. On this issue, I've spoken personally with many officers. We've disagreed on some points, but many have at least acknowledged that they understand my position. We all agree we want the best person to lead our police and fire departments. While I don't think tonight is the time to comment on who would take over, I think it is appropriate to talk about the process of taking over. The current civil service system is broken. There's no appetite by the state administration to fix it, and no one's been more frustrated by civil service than me. Maybe the command staff that has to listen to me grouse about it and the hurdles and impediments that they throw at us. Hiring, promotion, discipline, every day has been a struggle with civil service. I don't blame the few employees that are left up there but it's a broken system, there's no appetite to fix it, and it's not going to get better. Now, tonight, there's many examples that I could offer to you, but I'm going to crystallize it down to a few. In terms of hiring, we've had many times where we've had to go into Boston and explain to civil service why I bypassed a candidate for hire, even though that person had arrests on their record, that person was fired from several jobs, and I have to spend a day in civil service explaining why we bypassed that candidate. For promotions, there's a frustration in our department when our promotional process is stymied by civil service, and we wait months and months for results that they should have gotten the next day. We just got results back from captains and sergeants exams that were taken in October. I think that's outrageous, and I think it's unfair to the men and women who studied for the exam and had to wait for it. The last 2 assessment centers that civil service promised us they would have were both canceled. One as recently as last Monday, when we had signed up for the Regional Assessment Center through civil service. I got a call from the assistant director who said to me, I just want to let you know, the woman who's running it quit, we're canceling your assessment center. So I said, what do I do now? And his answer was, whatever you want, Chief. Do whatever you need to do. Discipline. The average case now takes between 12 and 18 months for a disciplinary case to be heard and adjudicated. In the meantime, the officer that's subject to that discipline may be out of work, may not be getting paid, and if he does get put back, then the city may be on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars in back pay. Now, the mayor referenced the Badge Quest study, where there's only about a quarter of the chiefs left in Massachusetts that are in the civil service system. I just want to highlight 2 that have taken themselves out of civil service, and to a man or woman in their department, they will tell you it's the best thing they've ever done. Wellesley and Reading have both taken their jobs out of civil service. The Reading chief is a civil service chief. When he leaves, it's going to revert to a non-civil service position. Wellesley and Reading have taken their entire department out, and I would ask anybody to call their department, union members, command staff, and their chief, and they will tell you it's the best thing they ever did. I've had an opportunity to review the proposed order that the mayor's put forward, and I think there's a number of points that bear repeating. Preference for internal candidates, the high value placed on tenured employees, community involvement, council confirmation. Now, I appreciate the dialogue that I've had with members of the department. We've disagreed without being disagreeable, and they know where I stand. I also think we should take a moment to notice that it speaks to the atmosphere within our department that so many officers come out, number one, that they care about what happens, and that's a plus. But I think we have also fostered an atmosphere that if there is disagreement, we can put it on the table without any fear of repercussion. The officers also will tell you that for about a year, I've lobbied for their support to take the entire department out of civil service. I have not had much success, but I've tried. I've spoken with the unions. I've spoken with the individuals. I think it would be hypocritical of me to stand here before you today and oppose this measure to take the chief's job out when I think the whole department should come out. I also want the councilors to know I appreciate the discussions that I've had with most of you. Many of you have asked thoughtful and probing questions, and I know it's to get a better understanding of this issue. And again, I think that speaks to the process. It's my opinion that this ordinance, as proposed, ensures a real process to select the best leader while simultaneously recognizing that that best leader may already be working within the police department. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Cody?
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak. It would be my opinion that the fire chief position stay in civil service. Civil service is not a new system. It's been around for quite a while, and it's a fully developed system. We don't have to invent anything. It's there. We can use it, and it's covered under Mass General Law, Chapter 31. They already have a system in place for advancement or promotions, and they produce the tests. We don't have to go out and replicate that. They bring in subject matter experts, write the test, and administer them fairly to the whole state. They also have a system for discipline, and though Chief Tucker says that it takes a while, it's the checks and balance that takes a while. It's a third-party civil service commission that you sit in front of, explain the case, and I think it's fair and equitable to everyone. I myself am a product of the system, and so is everybody else here in the fire and police department. I think it served us all well, and I think it served the city well. People in my department who desire to become chief spend years and years studying from a list of books that, again, subject matter experts put together, give to civil service, who they deliver to us, and that's what we study from for advancement. So these people, it's not a whim that they want to advance up through the system. It's, they got on the job, they've been lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, and then aspire to be chief. So it's kind of like when you went camping as a kid, you were always told to leave your campsite better than when you found it. And with a homegrown candidate, I think that's what's going to happen, is the fire department and the police department will be a much better place when they leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Now we're going to allow Ray, I can never pronounce your last name. Thank you. We're going to allow Ray, who represents the firefighters union, to make a statement, and then we'll open it up over to the police department. I believe you guys have a couple people. Yes, sir. And then after that, we'll go right around the room. So,
can I give a
sure.
copies of?
Yep.
Lieutenant Letter's going to give you a copy. I have a little thing on civil service that has some really key points in it.
Okay.
That you can muster over at your leisure. First of all, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm a proud resident of this city. I'm an even prouder member to be part of the Salem Fire Department, and I also have the greatest honor of all of representing 88 of the best fire officers and firefighters in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as their union president. I sat and I wrote bullets, and I put notes on notepads, and for me, it's just going to be easier to kind of shoot from the hip. I've spoke with just about every counselor on the council at least once, sometimes twice, maybe 3, 4, 5 times for others. Some have even come down and had a look at what we do. Civil service was put together in 1884, and it was basically to keep the political influence out of what went on in the day-to-day operations of the police department and the fire department, okay? But what it was really for was not the employees or the employer. It was to protect the citizens of the communities for which they represent, okay? This allows for the police chief and the fire chief to do their jobs, enforce laws, enforce fire codes and ordinances that are put in place to protect the citizens, okay? It's an old system, but it's a good system. It's worked in this community since 1924, which is over 90 years. I think the hirings of the chiefs coming up through have been fantastic. We've had great leadership. I personally take it as an insult that we would go outside, because look at this room. These are all people that aspire to be the leaders of their department. And there's 88 qualified candidates to be fire chief of the city of Salem, and there's probably 90 in the police department that are qualified to be chiefs of their departments, okay? We have a system for when things are broken. It goes through the system. Yes, it might take time. We have our disagreements, but it's fair and equitable, okay? Promotional exams. I sit down with my brother next to me. We take the same test. Okay, we study the same materials. He writes a better score. Kudos, he did a better job than I did. But we had the same system, free of any influence from outside. okay? I didn't have to worry about if his father or mother was a relative of somebody in political influence, and I hate to use that reference, but it can happen. No one has a crystal ball to say that it won't happen, okay?
Let the record reflect that Council Sergeant's entered the chamber. Thank you, Council. Sorry.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
For once in my life, I'm kind of lost at words here. We have good leaders in our departments, and I don't understand why we're changing what's there. Okay, you heard the term, if it's not broken, why are we fixing it? I've seen the chiefs that come through, I've seen the process work. My biggest issue with it, for us, okay, and for my brothers and sisters in the police department, is life-threatening situations. Nobody knows the employees or the brothers and sisters that they work with is more, the term I want to use because that's what they are, better than the people that work in that system, okay? When it comes to a matter of life or death and a decision has to be made on the snap of a finger, whoever that lead command officer is can look at 5 people and know their strengths and weaknesses in the snap of a finger because he's worked side by side with them throughout his career. And that's the difference between a CEO of a corporation and a command-structured police or fire officer, okay? Their decisions ultimately put people in harm's way and possibly could get them killed. I don't see too many CEOs out there that put their people in harm's way, unless you consider a paper cut at the copy machine harm's way. These people are dedicated, okay? We don't take this lightly. Our people work hard every single day. We're blue-collar workers. If we did this for the money, none of us would be here. We'd certainly do something else. But we take pride in what we do, okay? And I think it's fair that everybody in this room get that opportunity. The next fire chief is sitting here right now. The next police chief is sitting here right now. And my son's sitting over there. And he wants to follow in his father's footsteps. And he wants to aspire to be the fire chief someday. Will he get that opportunity, and will it be fair? I think under the current system, he may. He studies hard enough, puts his nose to the ground, he can have anything he wants. That's the great thing about this country. I don't support taking this out of civil service. I think my brothers that are going to, and sisters that are going to get up and speak after me will harp on it even more. But it's a good system. It's worked. We haven't had problems in Salem. If we had, we should address them. Present civil service may seem too restrictive with regulations and administrative procedures. Such defects are arguments for improvement of the system, not abandonment. So please consider that, okay? Thank you for your time. I appreciate us letting us speak.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm Lieutenant Walker, 25 years plus, Salem Police Department, the Superior Officer Union President. I've spoke with most of you, or some of you, and my representatives have spoke to all of you at least once or twice. We appreciate your concern on this incredibly important matter. You have no idea the stress, the anxiety that's going through the department right now in wondering what would happen down the road in this situation. I would also like to thank the members of the fire department, the police department. As you can see, there's a nice presence here to show support for the family that we are. Ray had a very good telling comment there on we do 32 years plus together down here. So this isn't like a corporation. This isn't like the human resources head or the personnel head. We're together through and through for our careers, unless and until you move on, you retire, or you get fired. So it's a little different beast than what was portrayed earlier. St. Pierre's name got brought up, Chief St. Pierre earlier. He's not here tonight, he had a meeting. I don't know that he would have come anyways, but I will tell you one thing that you that know him need to know. He's an adamant supporter of civil service, forever and forever. That is undisputed. Anybody here can tell you that. That means a lot. His opinion means a lot. I don't intend to reiterate what I put in my letter, the discussions that we've had, all the nuances of the drama involved in this maneuver. I would like to stress a few things, though. Excuse me. I'm just coming off a flu bug, so you'll have to bear with me. In page 1 of the new ordinance, because the old one was put aside, it was proposed that Salem members would have some preference A lot of you indicated to me in conversations that there should be some kind of preference to us in going forward if we would agree to let this come out and not fight it. That just is not possible. It stipulates in there that Salem members would get preference, or any member of a $30,000 member city and a national academy. In other words, we'll get preference, but everyone else is going to get preference, almost everyone else. There's no definitive preference to say, okay, here comes a Salem guy, he gets a few points, or he gets this much more consideration. And in conjunction with that, as I read through it time and time again, I noticed that the advisory, the Public Safety Leadership Advisory Committee, and the contents, and no indictment on the current administration, who's to say what happens in the future, but 6 of the 10 are the mayor and appointees, and 4 aren't. And then to get the council to confirm it at the end, well, if they're going to do all this work, you'd be hard-pressed as a council to go against what this Public Safety Leadership Committee has come to you with. Not that you wouldn't, but you'd be hard-pressed. So just little things to consider as you're reading through all these documents. I was told earlier today that this is an antiquated system. I would beg to pose this question. The Constitution is certainly a lot older than civil service, and I don't think that's an antiquated system. It was brought forward that the chief's maneuver to make chief is an assessment or an exam, or both. We should all, as the chief has told you, have to take a test first and then get through an assessment center and then get chosen. Should be the same way with the chief. So the or both wasn't up there. I have a note here, 75% are out of civil service. I wonder, were they in it and then got the chief out? Or were they just not in it? And just because they did it, is that the right thing for us to do? You know, it's a little twist on my letter that I wrote that was so widely publicized and criticized, but it bears bringing up again. Now, the mayor stipulated in her first part of her briefing to you, we've got quality people at Salem Police Department in leadership positions. Then it was, we have good people who can compete. So we have good and we have quality, but we may not have the best. I beg to say, a little bit of a problem with those words. The chief does not infer crime rate, the department does. I would completely agree with her on that. But the pride, the respect, the dignity that we have in doing that job, I can look you all in the eye and say that came from St. Pete when I got on. That was instilled in us. And it came from Paul after that. That was instilled in us. We take pride in our jobs. We know what we're supposed to be doing, what we have to do, and when we have to do it. And if we step on it, we're going to be held accountable. And as I sit here tonight, I fear saying a few things for the paper to put it in, and my brothers in neighborhood communities taking recourse to it. But I will stipulate that in several communities around here over the last several years, what the officers did on those police departments, some of them you've read about, some of them you're well aware of, they would have been fired here in a minute. And that's because of the pride, the respect, and the integrity that's been fostered in all of us at the Salem Police Department that we all hold true to this day. We're better than other departments because it was bred in us through those chiefs. As Ray said, the head of the police department and fire department is not the same beast. I couldn't agree with that more. This isn't like a military organization where people are coming and going. I did 25 years in an artillery unit, so I know a little bit about leadership. I've worked my way up to major. I'm a lieutenant on the Salem Police Department. I see good leaders. I can sit here and tell you eye to eye, uncategorically, we have good leaders down there, and there are quality contenders for this chief's position. There is no need to go outside this department. And quite frankly, Ray stole my thunder because I'm insulted. I'm embarrassed that we're even here talking about this. This did not have to happen. As the chief said, and this is a huge point, because I couldn't agree with him more on half, but you have to see the other half. Civil service is broken. It is broken intentionally. 25, 30 years ago, they had 50, 60 people working there. They had a budget. They were full tilt. Somewhere along the way, and more supported now than ever, the State House has debudgeted, ripped it clean, so that all these problems that are coming to them and costing them money and aggravation are going to go back to the cities and towns and they can wash their hands. Right now, there are 4 people, as he stated. 1 just quit. She's had it. The workload up there is unbearable. It's not broken because we broke it. It's broken because they didn't fund it. And by not funding it and putting the manpower in there, the delays occur time and time again. In that mode, that's the beast over here. The chief of police is a completely different war to fight. It's the quality contenders within your department and the system that is aligned, as you can read, one of the 4 to be chosen. So take apart what was said about the civil service program, because it is broken, because it was sabotaged, but it doesn't imply that the chief's process is wrong. And that's very important to consider. Wellesley and Reading have been taken out. I've actually spoke to a couple from Wellesley. There are about 32 people, small town, same as Reading. They negotiated some kind of a system to get out, but there aren't hundreds of them around that have taken their whole police department out. So keep that in mind as well. I have a few people that I'd like to follow, but I may come back up at the end in closing. I hope we have addressed all the different issues that have been brought forward tonight, and you have a real solid grasp. This is a good department. There are quality candidates. The crime statistics, though unbelievable in what we do compared to others, don't have a bearing per se on the chief, but our job, the way we come to work every day, is a direct reflection of Chief Paul Tucker, Chief St. Pierre, and it will continue. Because let me tell you something, if there's a problem down there, Paul and St. Pete have always had an open door policy, and you can go in and talk to them. And you can say, I don't think this is the right maneuver, or I think we need to do this, and they're fully listening, ears open, all good. And sometimes they even maneuver their stance on things. You get a new guy in there, God forbid, some guy from out of town. You've read it in my letters, you've heard it all before. The rapport that you lost, that we lost, that everybody lost, is going to take months, if not years, to build back up. And it's not there. Finally, and I do have more stuff, but I don't want to get into it if we don't have to, I implore you to bring this to a vote tomorrow night, if at all possible, because this is weighing heavily on a lot of people. It's restricting potential promotions. There's anxiety about bringing other people in, and I quite frankly don't think it's fair to the Salem Police Department to be going through this. At this time, I'd like to introduce Captain Tom Griffin, also a senior member on the Salem Police Department. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you on this very important issue. As you can tell by the number of officers and firefighters in the room, it's a very important issue to all of us, and we appreciate your time. As Jimmy said, my name's Tom Griffin. I'm a captain with the police department. I've been with the police department approximately 27 years. I've been assigned to the Criminal Investigation Division for the last 20 years, and I rose through the ranks within that division, and I worked very closely with Chief Tucker the whole way through. When I first started in this police department, a captain pulled me aside and he advised me, probably the best advice I could have was to stick with the books, keep studying, and always give yourself an opportunity to move ahead. And that's what I did. And every chance I had to take a test, I took a test, and fortunately, I did well. I took assessment centers, and that's what brought me to the position that I'm in today. Until about a month ago, we had a different scenario in terms of the competition for the chief, and now everything seems to be up in the air. And that's concerning to me personally, but it's also concerning to the men and women of both departments, and that's why it's important for us to bring this to you folks tonight. Jimmy highlighted a couple times, there's a lot of anxiety around the police department about this. And one thing that's always been a hallmark of our police department is stability. We've had stability for the last almost 30 years. We've had 2 exceptional police chiefs. You couldn't get 2 better role models than those 2 police chiefs that we have in how to run a police department in the city of Salem. That fact has provided comfort and stability not only just to the police officers, it's also provided comfort and stability to you folks here, as well as the citizens throughout the city of Salem. The citizens of our city and our police officers are very proud of the way we carry ourselves and the way we do our job on a daily basis. We have some very high-quality leaders, and there's no reason to believe that if an internal candidate was taken as chief of police, there wouldn't be anything but an exceptional leader in the mold of Chief Tucker, as well as retired Chief St. Pierre. When you start to think about policing, there's a lot of different philosophies about the best way to go about policing a particular city. Unfortunately, there's no one-size-fits-all model. What works in Arizona, what works in Philadelphia, what works in Florida may not work here in Salem. What you have to do is you have to have knowledge of your particular city. We've no longer just lock them up and throw away the key agency. We work to solve problems in the community. And if you don't know the community, you're going to have a difficult time solving problems there. I would venture to say, with our history with this police department, nobody knows this city better than we do. We have a long history here. We raised our families here. We went to school here. We're intimately familiar with all the issues in Salem, more so than any external candidate will ever be. And that should bring you folks comfort so that you know that we have the best interest of the city of Salem in mind when we do our job. As a group, we're concerned about an outside candidate possibly coming in. It's possible that some people are very good test takers, and if you rely on just an exam, a written exam, some people do well, some people don't test in those kind of exams very well. When I was in high school, you had to take the SATs to go to college. People have realized that's not a good measure of what a kid might be, and they've gone away from that. Assessment centers, as the mayor said, they are great tools. I've taken a number of them myself. I've been on the other side and been the assessor in those tools. When you do a 2 or 3 day assessment, that candidate's bringing his A game the whole time, and they're gonna try and excel. Problem is what does that person do when no one's really paying attention? The mark of a good leader is what they do when the lights are off, you know, when no one knows what's going on. I would venture to say that you folks know what this police department does on a day-to-day basis. You know the type of leaders we have here. You've seen us out there on Halloween when, you know, everybody has to be on the top of their game. You've read about major criminal investigations that have been solved very simply and quickly and professionally. So that should bring you a level of confidence about what we can do as a police department. I think that about 90 years ago, your predecessor sat here and decided pretty much this very same issue, whether or not to put the police department and the fire department into civil service. And they decided it was a good idea. And I don't see any reason that should be changed at this point. A lot of people, we bring up our issues about political influence into the law enforcement and into the fire service. With all due respect to the mayor, we have the utmost respect for you. We don't expect that there be any kind of undue influence from this administration. But this isn't just about this administration. This isn't just about me today. This is about the future, 5, 10, 15 years from now, where who knows who's going to be in charge of what. And that's something we need to consider, because once we make this decision, it's final. It's over with. If we're taken out, we're out. And if you don't think that there can be political influence in a police department, I can just tell you a story about a department in the northern part of our county where the mayor was elected in 2009. It was only 4 or 5 years ago. His campaign manager was a sergeant on the police department. Shortly after the election, he's deputy chief of the police department. You can imagine what that did to the morale of that police department. You can imagine what that did to the public confidence in that police department. Not to mention the fact that 2 or 3 years later, that same individual got indicted for corruption. So that set that department into a tailspin. That's going to take years for them to recover the public confidence and the morale in that police department. The mayor would like us to be with the police chief as essentially a cabinet member. And one thing that concerns us is that we have stability with our police department. And if every time there's a new mayor, we have to worry that there might be a new police chief, that's something that's going to rattle that stability. That happened in a city not too far from here, where a new mayor was elected, the sitting chief was removed, and a lieutenant was promoted. Now, that may have been a good idea for that police department, but do they have to worry now that if that mayor doesn't get reelected in 2 or 3 years, they're going to have a new police chief? It's very difficult to do a long-term plan for a police department if you're not sure if your chief's going to be there 3, 4, 5 years out. So we've been blessed with having the stability of having both Chief Tucker and Chief St. Pierre. When Chief St. Pierre was in charge, after a short period of time, it became very clear that Chief Tucker was going to be the next person. Everybody in the police department became aware of his abilities and knew that he would be the next guy. And I venture to say that now that Chief Tucker's in charge, the men and women of this police department will tell you that there are plenty of qualified candidates within our department that they're comfortable with us leading that police department. So with that in mind, and with everything else my other officers and firemen say, I would ask that you vote to keep the civil service protection for both the fire and the police. Thank you for your time.
Captain Gilligan.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Those of you who don't, I welcome you and look forward to working with you in the future. My name is Captain Brian Gilligan. I'm the commander of the Special Operations Division. For those of you who don't know what that means, essentially, I think my most visible responsibility is that I'm in charge of coordinating our public safety response and overseeing it for haunted happenings. So generally, that's probably the face of my position. You know, one of the unfortunate things about going last is a lot of people have touched on what you were going to say. I'm a very proud member of the Salem Police Department, and because of my position and what I do, my role in the police department, I get to work very closely with the mayor and the people who work with the mayor, and I think we have an outstanding working relationship. I have the utmost respect for the mayor. We have clearly the best chief anywhere in this area or this region, and we're all very fortunate at the Salem Police Department, okay? And the proposal the mayor's put forward, she makes a lot of good points, but unfortunately, I'm gonna have to tell you that I passionately disagree with her for a number of concrete reasons that go well beyond the arguments that we read in the paper that this is, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it, versus what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or what's good for others is good for Salem argument. I don't think either of those arguments really flesh out the important details to lead us in the direction to make an informed decision about what we should do or shouldn't do. And I think the mayor raised some important points that this is Salem, and we view ourselves here as a little bit above average of doing things the right way and getting things done the right way. And I think, you know, the economy in the city, the things we're doing in the city, the things the mayor's office is doing, the council's doing, the fire department's doing, the other departments, I think they all exemplify that. So I think what we really need to move towards is what is the best thing for the city. And to me, if recent history is any indicator of the future, I would say remaining in the process that's provided us with an excellent string of chiefs in both the police and fire departments, and has provided us, in my opinion, with the finest police department in this state, not just this region. I would caution you that as members of the council, I think this may be one of the most important, if not the single most important decision you make as sitting city councilors. Your decision on this issue will have far-reaching impacts on the delivery of public safety services in this city for decades and decades to come. Your decision will have an enormous impact on the citizens of Salem. The citizens of the Salem deserve that we ask the hard questions and that we do what's best for them. The primary question, and others have touched on it, is, you know, clearly we shouldn't be doing this because other cities and towns have decided to do it. Other cities and towns have recognized that they had pressing issues that they needed to address, and they did that through change by getting out of the civil service process, okay? There are no pressing issues right now that need to be addressed. The most pressing issue is to ensure that we continue in the same vein that we're going right now. Civil service, well, it may have its flaws, And I think I would disagree with the chief that, in my opinion, those flaws are more at the entry and first line level. Okay, I recognize that those are flaws that need to be fixed, but those are flaws that evaporate as you move up the chain of command. And clearly, civil service's underlying premise of fundamental fairness and insulation from political influence are still very viable concepts and very, very much needed in today's world. I think we need not look any farther than Bridgegate and Governor Christie to realize that, unfortunately, in this world, in these modern times where we think it's not there, that undue political influence and corruption are still very much alive. As far as the first issue, the concern about the robustness of the process, I think as the only member of the department outside the chief who took the last assessment, I'm uniquely qualified to answer that question. I can tell you that the assessment center I participated in, and we were fortunate enough to have Chief Tucker selected as our chief of police in that assessment center, was very, very robust. It was very much the same assessment center that's given to potential chiefs of police, both within and without civil service. I will tell you that that's not going to change. If we stay in civil service, it's going to be the same assessment center we have if we're outside of civil service. The key with assessment centers is your community, are your community leaders specifically tailoring those assessment centers to identify the traits that you want in a leader? Are you guys doing the work up front to make sure that that assessment center, when it's conducted and people are looked at, are they looking for those desirable traits that you've identified as a community to identify the chief you want? I don't think there's any other city or town that I'm aware of within or without civil service that's doing anything different than that. And I would just say to you that the process is going to remain the same. The other key question is, I've heard, you know, we hire other city leaders the same way. I would suggest to you that a public safety administrator, particularly in this city, is significantly different than hiring a DPW director or some of the other department heads. There are some, when you're talking about issues of use of deadly force and things of that nature, I would say it's a significantly different position. Okay, Salem is very unique, okay? And I agree with the mayor. We are a desirable place. But again, I think that's more of a reason to go with experience, and experience in the city or town you're working in. Salem is particularly unique if you take a look at the fact that we have a major hospital, probably one of the biggest hospitals north of Boston. We have a university. We have the power plant. We have the LNG tank. We have lots of critical infrastructure. We hold a world-renowned event in the city. We probably hold more other special events than any other city north of Boston. We have a homeless shelter. We have an extremely diverse population, both within and outside our schools. We have all the public safety problems that go along with that. I would suggest to you to be a public safety leader and to be a chief of police in Salem, you have to be uniquely adept at recognizing and dealing with those issues. We in the police department have created a number of specialized units. Many of you get to work with the community impact unit and the special response unit. As someone who played a role in the development of those units, I can tell you those units were developed and perfected over the span of a couple of chiefs, okay? I don't think that would be possible under short-term chiefs. You know, there really is the danger of the revolving door. I think if you look at the mayor's comments in her letter to you, that she believes that city leaders should be given more flexibility in selecting their team. I think those words are key, their team, because once a new mayor comes in, that chief is not part of their team. That chief's probably going to be out the door. Is that possible? I think if you look at, a community near us, recently an outgoing mayor appointed a chief, and when he was being sworn in under the new chief, when he was being sworn in under the new mayor, the new chief was being sworn in under the new mayor. The new mayor didn't even attend his swearing in. So I think that goes to how new mayors feel about existing personnel who are left over from a previous administration. I think there's a very real danger that could create the revolving door effect. And I would ask you to recognize that Salem, you need to ask, why is Salem so successful? Why is Salem unique? Why are we different from these communities that are having trouble? Why have we been lucky enough to have two great chiefs of police? Was it just pure luck? Has that luck run out? I would suggest to you no. I would suggest to you that for a long time, the Salem Police Department has engaged in a program of executive development, and that Chief St. Pierre and Chief Tucker have promoted leadership specifically tailored to deal with the unique problems of policing Salem. We're a very unique city. It'd be very difficult for someone else to come in here from somewhere else, and I don't care what their resume says, for them to get up and running within 3 years to understand these programs like the Community Impact Unit and the Special Response Unit and how they deal with the unique problems of Salem would be virtually impossible, in my opinion. And there's a very real danger. Again, I would ask you in your decision-making, assess the risks and the potential benefits of this decision. Are there real tangible benefits to taking this out of civil service? Are there real risks? I think there are real risks. There's risks that the new chief won't see eye to eye with the rest of the police department about the success of these units that benefit the community a great deal. That he might come in and decide to do away with those units. He might have his own ideas about what's successful in Salem. And I would suggest to you that would be very disruptive, because many of these programs and many of these units have been time-tested as successful. What are some of the other risks? I think as a country, we cherish the notion in American government of checks and balances, okay? We're very cautious about separating powers and insulating one part of the government from another. I would suggest when you're a member of the cabinet, when you're a member of a team, I think by its very nature that you're susceptible to undue influence, but most of the time, it's just about not speaking your mind when you probably should, okay? I think the chief spoke earlier about his first few weeks in office, about how he had an enormous disagreement over the communication delivery system at the police department, and how him and the mayor worked through that. And as I said, I have the utmost respect for the mayor, and certainly my concern is not with this administration. But going forward, I have a great deal of concerns. I think if you speak to Chief St. Pierre as well, he will tell you about enormous disagreements he had in trying to build a new police station, in trying to secure semi-automatic weapons when we were one of the only departments around still carrying revolvers. I would ask you to ask the question, would Chief St. Pierre have survived to get to another mayor to build the police department? Would Chief St. Pierre have survived to get to another mayor to get semi-automatic weapons? Is there a concern that because a chief is not going along with the program, that he's not going to be there. I think there's a very real concern, and I think the process of taking someone out of the protections of civil service leaves them open to undue influence, but more importantly, I think it naturally infuses a chilling effect into what the mayor refers to as forthright communication and dialogue in her letter to the council. I think it's imperative for a chief to be effective that he's able to have forthright communication and dialogue with the chief executive of the city. And in my opinion, and many of those in the department, that's simply not possible under the proposed system. I would implore you to consider your decision carefully. I would say to you, I would echo the comments of many who've come before me, that we have a highly qualified group of applicants. I think if you look at the baseline criteria for any chief of police job in this country, that the guys who would be considered to be the chief of police in this city meet and exceed that criteria. I think they're uniquely qualified to lead this department because they are specialists in policing the city of Salem. And I think if given a choice for heart surgery, you would prefer to get a heart surgeon as opposed to an orthopedic surgeon, okay? If you're able to get a specialist in one particular field who's abundantly qualified, I don't know why we would do business any other way. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Excuse me, Mr. President, Sergeant King has a few words.
Sergeant King. It's funny, because I'm lefty, I was going to go from right to left, so typically everyone goes left to right, but...
So, I'm Dennis King, a sergeant with the police department. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here tonight. I'm going to say that everything's been covered, but I did put some notes together that I'd like to talk about. And as I listened to the captain, to the lieutenant, to the sergeant, to our brother officer, or our brothers in fire service talk about some of the themes, you're going to hear them again right now. And it was really eerie that Captain Griffin, I think he read what I wrote right before, because like verbatim on a few of them, we shared the same thought. So I'm suggesting that's more because we are like-minded and we're thinking the same way on this very important issue. I have it written here that I'll be brief, so if you've heard me speak before, I'm going to try to stick to that. It's written down right here. But it's not tonight, but the vote that you'll have tomorrow is about removing the hiring of our chief from civil service. I am emphatically against this and trust the current system, which gives the opportunity for only hardworking men and women within the Salem Police Department this opportunity. This has become a part of a larger debate about the usefulness of civil service. I am also emphatically a proponent of civil service. I believe in the system that was developed out of misguided practices for hiring, promoting, and firing. And that was patronage, nepotism, politics, call it what you will. I favor a merit system. Albeit flawed and in need of improvements, and we've talked about many of them tonight, I believe in the system that at the end of the day promotes an equal playing field, individuals into position of leadership. The system has created all of the leaders before you today, including Chief Tucker, including Chief Cody. Those who will come someday into leadership's position in the future, and they're the officers over here that are taking the exams and going through the process, all of the leaders that we need for this police department are in this building right now. I find the defense of the system of utmost importance, and I'm defending the system. What the system and its stability means to me. Stability and high morale comes from an earned respect and admiration of your leaders. That's very important, and that's a valued statement for people that are putting their lives at risk every day for the civilians, for the society, whatever you want to call it. To have earned respect and admiration from your leaders is a very important point. These experiences with these leaders over time with Captain Griffin, with Captain Gilligan, with Lieutenant Walker. These experiences that we developed in these really stressful, high-risk incidents is what builds stability. And we know that stability is a hallmark of police departments. And again, it's strengthened over time. It's strengthening when you're pushed to the limit, when you're giving services to the people of Salem, you strengthen that stability. The chief is a powerful figurehead that puts the department in the best position to succeed. In my experience at the Salem Police Department in 15 years, we've had the two best in the state, two best in the country, without question. Every time the chief however, every time the chief position changes, the department is vulnerable to a period of uncertainty. Stability and certainty are what police officers need to succeed. Bringing outside high-climbing candidates with a contract increases these number of periods. That's my opinion. I believe that that's what's going to happen. That the city of Salem is vibrant, it's dynamic, it's going to attract these individuals that might want to make their statement in this city. I believe in that. That creates stability for our department. Why would we put our department in this position without a legitimate reason? That is my question. That is what I've been talking to myself about and others for the last couple of weeks. We'll talk a little bit about the department. Jimmy wanted me to talk a lot about what we do. The police department is proactive, dynamic, and forward-thinking organizations. Everybody before that sits in this room knows that. Our officers handle over 30,000 calls a year. We serve 8.2 square miles. We face challenges that push our efforts and resources to their limits. I know the mayor would agree with that. I know the chief, everyone in this room knows that we push ourselves to the limits. If we compare ourselves to neighboring communities, just say there's no comparison. That's how I'm going to sum that up. We promote multi-agency collaborations to solve problems. We have non-traditional relationship with neighborhood associations and all of the major partners in the city. In my opinion, we are amongst the best departments in the state. I agree with Captain Gilligan. We are the best department in the state. And you say, why do you say that? I'll tell you why. Because other departments come to Salem and see how we're doing things. That's a fact. I'm not making that up. You asked, do I think we have police right now that could continue to lead and grow our department? I say we do, and I say they are. You asked, do I think that opening the position up to an outside person enhances our progress or organization? I emphatically say it does not. So finally, you might be thinking, does he want to be chief someday? I have in my notes, I got one laugh, so I need more, so everybody should be laughing. My answer would be, maybe, with more experience and time, but more importantly, I would like to be afforded the opportunity to make that decision when the time comes, and that's why I support the current system in a place which allows me that choice. Thanks.
All right, so we're going to open it up. We're going to start, because I'm lefty, we're going to start over here. Anyone? Going around? We're in the back now. Anybody out in the hall? Oh, there you go. There you go.
My name's Bill Jennings. I'm a police officer in Salem, City of Salem for over 30 years now. I'm also a resident of Salem. I've been working with all these gentlemen and ladies for a long time. Fire department, I'm with them a lot. We go on a lot of calls together. Civil service has been good for the city. All right. Ms. Driscoll is my fourth mayor. And I think that Brian brought up a good question. She's not always going to be here. There's going to be another mayor. They might want to change things. That's what I'm worried about. I'm on the way out. I'm going to be going in a couple of years. But I'm going to still live in this city. And I'm worried about what's going to happen down the road for these kids over here that just started. You got a good bunch of guys, best chief. Bob St. Pierre's working over in Peabody. I'll tell you what my friends in Peabody told me. They wish they could have him there forever. He came down Christmas Eve and said hello to the guys working Christmas Eve. They were never done in 25 years in that department. So that's the kind of man he is. It's the kind of man this guy has. This is this department you have. We're very, very best department in the city, this state right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Through the back, outside. Over here.
Hi.
Sergeant Gifford.
For those of you councilors I haven't met yet, my name's Sergeant Peter Gifford. With the exception of Captain Camo, I'm the senior man on the police department. I'm on my 5th mayor and going on my 4th chief. And on St. Patrick's Day, I start my 37th year. I'll cut right to the chase, though. I'd like to read from a passage from the 43rd Massachusetts Appeals Court ruling in 1997 regarding the City of Cambridge versus the Civil Service Commission. The judge wrote, and I quote, "In 1884, the Massachusetts legislature enacted the Commonwealth Civil Service Law. Massachusetts was the second state to pass such a statute. The fundamental purpose of the civil service system is to guard against political considerations, favoritism, and bias in government employment decisions when there are, in connection with personnel decisions, overtones of political control or objectives unrelated to merit standards or neutrally applied public policy," end quote. It's that simple, to guard against political considerations. That's what civil service is for. The system produced both Chiefs St. Pierre and Tucker. By all accounts, they're both good chiefs. St. Pierre was considered one of the best in the state, and under the proposed system, he may never have been chief at all, bypassed perhaps by a friend of City Hall. So, also remember 1884 when this law was passed. That was less than 20 years after the Civil War. The state was no doubt flooded with mangled and disabled veterans, but they found this issue important enough to pass into law at the time. So you got to ask yourself, what the hell was going on back then? And I'll close by saying, remember the old adage, those who don't learn from the mistakes of the past, I do to repeat them. Thank you.
Anyone in the back? Anyone here at the table? Over here against the wall? Teasy.
I thought we were going to go with the fire and police first. That's what I was waiting for.
Oh, no, we take everybody.
Thank you. You know, mirror, mirror on the wall, each and every one of you, when you go home this evening or tomorrow morning, and you look and say, boy, I've got a big decision to make. I have to vote on this within the next week or two, or whenever they bring it forward or out of committee. You've heard from men and women here, you know, from the departments. But not only the departments of where they put their life on the line. I want you to think also of the people employed by the police department and by the fire department. I want you to think also of their families. I want you to think when they go out to work in the morning, they sometimes, you know, you worry and you say a prayer, will they be coming home that night? You say, well, not big things really happen in a small community like Salem. It only takes one incident to take your loved one away from you. We've lost people here with different things that have happened. This big decision, you know, the best leaders are the ones that control the lives of the men and women that work in these departments. I just want you to remember, mirror, mirror on the wall. Are you qualified to make this decision? I think you are. But when you do it, think with your heart, think with your mind, and think of these families. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone over here? No one? We're all set? Council will go. Hand up first.
Thank you.
It's a committee meeting.
I'm going to stand because all of these guys are here. All of these people are here. I'm glad to see a room full of concerned policemen, firemen, and citizens here today. I wish we had this more often in these chambers. I don't really need motivation to do my job to the best of my ability, but to see something like this does give me additional motivation to really give a little more thought to whatever issue that we're looking at. We really don't hear, or I don't hear, in my opinion, from the people that are affected by our decisions often enough and strongly enough, with one or two minor exceptions. Who we hear from at just about every meeting. I wish we heard from people more. I wish more people would email me, would stop me on the street, would ask me about things. This is a good turnout, it's a solid turnout, and I'm glad to see it, and I think it's a testament to both departments and to the city of Salem. So I thank you guys for coming here. I'm going to violate one of my basic rules here. I'm probably going to go a little longer than 2 minutes tonight. I don't really like to do that.
You have the floor.
I've had some conversations with more than a few people over the last couple of days. I had 2 conversations with the mayor, one on the telephone, 28 minutes and 6 seconds. I very seldom have conversations over 2 minutes on the telephone. I don't like talking on the telephone. The other exception to that 2-minute phone call was Ray Kajeski, and a long talk with him. I spoke with the mayor in our office yesterday with Councilor Gerard, and I'm going to give the mayor some credit because I can come across pretty strong sometimes, and I make no apologies for that. That's who I am. But the mayor can also come across pretty strong on occasion, and I'm going to give her credit for that because there's nothing wrong with that. And we had a pretty dynamic back and forth conversation, perhaps to the amusement of Councilor Gerard before she got a chance to weigh in. And we agreed that we were going to disagree. At one point, the mayor alluded to the fact that maybe I was being a little parochial because I am an old-time Salem guy. I can out-Salem everybody here on this council with the possible exception of Councilor Sargent. But it would be an interesting conversation. I went to kindergarten back in 19-whatever with Sergeant Bobby Carter. I survived the Hawthorne School, perhaps Salem's most notorious attempt at public education, with a patrolman by the name of Gary LeBrun. I ran track with another patrolman by the name of Barry Driscoll. And for 1 year, my leader on the cross-country team as a freshman, he was a senior, was a gentleman who looks almost exactly the same today as he did back in 1975, and that is Chief Paul Tucker. So initially when the mayor said that maybe I was being kind of protective and being parochial in my statements and my interests, I denied it. But on further thought, you know what, she's right. But I have no problem with that because I know people in this department going back to almost the beginning of my life. And over the past 5 to 10 years, 15 years, I've met a lot of these gentlemen here on both departments who I like and respect. And I know they would do a difficult job. I agree with a lot of the things that people said. I disagree on some levels. I think the civil service system is broken, but I'm going to go along with what Lieutenant Walker said. It's not broken because it just wore down. It's broken because it's been neglected, which state and municipal governments have been want to do over the last 20 years with just about anything that they don't really want to spend money on anymore. And they do allow things to fall apart and not to operate correctly, and we all pay the price for that. People spoke about Lawrence. I lived in Lawrence for most of the 1990s. I lived and worked there. I was there in the 90s when a new chief came in from Boston. I met him at the Lawrence Y. He was hitting the heavy bag next to me, and I looked over. He was hitting it a lot harder and a lot faster, and he was 20 years older than me. And his name was Bob Hayden, and he came in. He was brought in by the mayor of Lawrence to be the chief there, and he came in and he made a hell of an impact over about a 2.5 year period. He was a professional. He really knew what he was doing. But he was a hired gun for whatever reason. 2.5 years later, when there was a mayoral change, he was gone. And Lawrence Police Department, which had started to recover a little bit, went right back into the hopper, and we know where they are now. I also met another gentleman from Lawrence that people allude to, which is the recently deposed mayor. At the time, I know him moderately well. I was never excited for Lawrence when he became mayor. Civil service had nothing to do with him becoming mayor. The people who elected him. Tonight, and even tomorrow, if this goes to the full council, I'm not going to support this for various reasons, but I'm not going to get into the whys. I had that discussion with the mayor. I've had that discussion with other people. What I will support and what I would like to see happen is I would like to see this stay in committee, whether it has to stay in the committee of the whole, whether we refer it to ordinances, licenses, and legal affairs. I would like to see it stay in committee, and I'd like to see, the mayor had a nice slide up there, the old verse new, at the table. She listed the groups of people that she would bring to the table if we were to okay this in order to pick the next chiefs. I wouldn't mind seeing the same dynamic, the same people there come together in a committee, sit down and talk about this, take the ordinance that the mayor has proposed, and see if between the mayor's office, the city solicitor, human resources, the police department, the fire department, and maybe a representative from the council, see if they can sit down over a period of time and hammer out something that will work for everybody. Because to quote somebody else that spoke here tonight, Forthright communication and dialogue is really what makes things happen, and I know the mayor is capable of forthright communication and dialogue, and I know the police department is, and I know the fire department is, and I think that's exactly what this deserves. It deserves a little more time. It deserves that forthright communication and dialogue, because to take a phrase from somebody else that spoke here tonight, Sergeant King, you can't defend the system because the system is broken. You can't deny that it's broken. Whose fault is it? It's not our job. I'd like to see this stay in committee. I'd like to see a working group formed and see if over a period of time, rational, reasonable people can get together and hammer out an agreement that works for everybody. Because if it works for you guys, it's going to work for me. That's what we need to see, and that's what I'd like to see. So, thank you very much.
Councilor Fury, Councilor Turiel, and then Councilor Councilor Fury.
Privilege and pleasure of serving in the four different mayors. In nearly 30 years elective office. Salem, with distinguished service in law enforcement, Hamilton, Stan Youthridge, now our present mayor. And I'm glad we're all taking the high road tonight. The firmly, sincerely, Bill, the issue should end tomorrow on a 10-vote opposed to this measure. And the people who are in this room do not deserve to come back meeting after meeting. More stress. We have got the best department possible. You know what I know. Civil service is not a perfect system, and it has many flaws. But it is much better system than ever before. I am reading a book, The Bully Pulpit, by Dawes Kearns Goodwin, about the friendship and rivalry of two distinguished people, Teddy Roosevelt and Taft. Big issues on civil service in this, the Pendleton Act and so on. Dawes Kearns Goodwin does an outstanding job on what she does. Tonight, we see a visible sea of proud blue uniforms. In yet another book, Stephen Ambrose wrote, We Band of Brothers, I should say sisters too in this instance. It tells an heroic story of duty, honor, and country in World War II, telling of the role of brotherhood and sisterhood as we see tonight that is so vital. I once mentioned to a firefighter, Norman LaPointe, I wish teachers, which I've been a teacher for 40 years, had the loyalty we have tonight. As a park instructor in 1971 at the Broad Street Playground, I had a young David Cote. I grew up as a young boy with a real role model, Bill Cohane, a cousin, a career officer in the Salem Police Force. I lived for 5 years next to the police station on Essex and Boston Street, where some of your relatives maybe have worked. I once had dreams and ambitions to be a police officer and a firefighter, as most young people do. Thank God, in a way, I didn't become a teacher. What would happen to a young recruit, and I see many young people in this audience, if he or she came aboard with dreams of becoming the chief? Upward mobility under this measure would not be a reality if we pass it tonight. We could possibly have a nationwide search for chief who may come to use this as a launching pad for future career endeavors. We've seen that in the school department. Many of the officers here live, work, grow up, went to school, and pay taxes. They love their jobs. You see it here. You breathe it. Their neighborhoods, their city of Salem, they are vested and proud of it. Chief St. Pierre worked himself up the ladder with pride and distinction. The police station is named after him for his dedicated service. Chief Tucker also worked himself up the system and also got college degrees like Chief St. Pierre. Chief St. Pierre was so well respected, he took over Salem State University security recently. He's also now acting police chief in Peabody with high regard. Chief St. Pierre is also the active member of the most valuable member, very valuable member of the licensing board, Energizer Battery. Chief Tucker, Chief St. Pierre, Chief Cody have that universal trust and respect as innovators and educators on the college level and everywhere. Wherever you go in Salem, they are the Norman Rockwell chiefs. Everyone knows their name, and they know most of our names. We call each Dave, Bob, Paul, Chief. It reminds me of a TV program called Cheers. We are very, very blessed to live in Salem, in this city. The system is not broken. We have cleaned house often over the years, because of the respected force that we have tonight. In fact, Chief St. Pierre went up to Salisbury under Town Manager Neil Harrington to play a role in that town. I believe the young generation will regret soon their lack of unions, wages, hours, and working conditions, and civil service conditions. Only 25% of young people are in the union workforce now these days, and they're going to regret it. Job rights, protection, promotion, civil service. Civil service is not a silver bullet. It was never meant to be. Teddy Roosevelt, Taft. It was not a silver bullet for veterans, for residents, for college-educated people, a Peace Corps. But it's better than having it, not having it. Front page headlines. We're talking about children. Children's life. In this room, we're talking about life and death. We're talking about children in the front page article in the last couple of weeks. As a school teacher, as a parent, front page article, we see privatizing a level 4 Bentley school, rotating door of superintendents in the last 20 years, and assistant superintendents in years, over 20 years. Superintendent Russell has a 1-year contract. Hello? We have had a rotating door of high school principals that most of us can't even mention tonight, including the Bentley School. The time has come. Sincerely, Mr. Legault, no more debate, no more discussion, no more committee. These people do not deserve it. I sincerely believe.
Council, please refrain from addressing other councils in the room, please.
No, I sincerely, I have just one shortly, and one more thing. After a very distinguished career in the Salem Police Department, Captain Bob Callahan, who served us so well, is now head of security at the PVD Essex Museum. My boss at the PVD Essex Museum. I'm a security guard there. I'm in awe of him. I work as a part-time security guard. So I believe, sincerely, Mr. Legault, Councilor Legault.
Council, will you
Okay,
please refuse?
I don't think the debate should go on with the rest of you. My vote is no. I normally back up mayors. I've served on committees in the past, a superintendent. I've served on principal committees. I've had 5 adopted children that you know many of them you worked with over the years. Those committees did not work out over the years. Look at the number of superintendents and principals we've had. Distinguished people that served on it. Some of them rigged committees. Sincerely, I served with them. I know it from experience. I don't want to serve on that committee as a city councilor. I'm a politician, I'm a local politician. I don't know law enforcement. I don't know about life and death. These people do. I don't think we need to go on that long list of, so many committees. Salem people will be recognized. The track record's not there, ladies and gentlemen. The track record is not there. The system's not broken. I believe that we should end the discussion in Salem. Thank you.
Councilor Terrell, and I would just, for the record, councilors, please limit your comments to obviously a very important topic, but please avoid addressing other councilors in the room by name. It's obviously, as we all know, you address them by title or position. You do not make this personal. This is a very personal issue, but let's not make it personal amongst ourselves. Councilor Terrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I'd like to address this a little bit. I concur with a good deal of what I've heard here tonight. And I have very serious concerns about what could potentially happen were we to change the system we have here. I worry about how a future mayor could easily terminate a well-respected chief. That's certainly a concern. I worry about the hiring process. We have not actually taken up the ordinances that are before us as well. We don't officially take those up until tomorrow night, but although this proposed hiring ordinance takes some steps towards addressing concerns that I have raised in discussions with the mayor and with the chiefs as well. Despite that, like I said, I have concerns here with some of the things that are contained within the ordinance, and I do think at this point it's probably worthwhile for us to not yet, it's worth it for us to not yet end it, but to keep it in committee at this point, because we do need to seriously look at the ordinances that are being submitted to us. That all said, I have a lot of difficulty seeing how the changes will work despite the shortcomings in civil service, as a system. I want to also sort of point out that the issues with civil service, although they are severe, what we're talking about here is not ending the system entirely. We're talking about ending it for one particular position. And that's big. That has a big impact up and down the line. And yes, most of the departments, particularly the police departments in the state, have in fact made that change. But then again, throughout most of the state looks at Salem's department and says, this is how we ought to be doing things. And that's a big distinction, and that makes it a change that one does not take very lightly whatsoever. So we do have to look very carefully at all the issues involved here. We have, excuse me, we have to look at, is changing the chief's position from civil service, is that a slippery slope? Does that potentially start us down the way of making other unwanted changes? But to address the concerns on the other side, yeah, we do have departments here. There's a lot of people in this room, a lot of whom I've met, some of whom I haven't, but there's a lot of people in this room right now who could potentially be stepping into those chief shoes someday and creating the movement that goes along with it. Would a system that we put into place see to it that suddenly all these people are blocked? Suddenly we have good candidates who have to go elsewhere if they want to advance to in cities that have taken it out of civil service. But, do we develop the leaders that we need to develop and have been doing a fine job of developing? We're very fortunate here in that we've had very strong leadership in both departments for many, many years. We have a big stockpile of talent in both departments. We have people with a lot of skill, a lot of ability, and the potential to lead this or any number of other departments. To use a cliche here, to use a saying, as far as the professionalism and talent in our departments, Salem punches way above their weight class. Way above their weight class. We have a department that's the envy of most of the other ones statewide. So, that all being said, I do believe that tonight what we should be doing, and I'm sorry I'm sorry if this winds up, if people get the feeling that we're trying to make it go longer. I think what we should be doing is keeping this matter today in our committee, combining it with the actual ordinances themselves that are being proposed when they come before us tomorrow, and trying to see if there is in fact a way to make something work that works for everybody and gives the people within our departments the protection that they deserve and the proper consideration and right to hopefully advance that they deserve, without leaving the city in, if someday this pipeline runs dry, which I sincerely hope it doesn't, and if it does, it'll probably be long after the time that everybody in this room is serving. All the people serving in the department and all the people serving here at these tables. We do need to think about whether we need to do more to be prepared for the future, but I would say that future is certainly not upon us yet. So I have no problem with us taking the time to look at this and see if there is a better way. But right now, I don't know, and I don't see that there is a better way.
Thank you. Councilor Epley.
I'm going to stand for this, for one thing, because I've been sitting for a while. I would appreciate standing. First of all, I just want to say, David Epley, I'm the Ward 4 counselor. Many of you don't know me because I just moved here 6 years ago. Counselor, I don't mean to identify one of my colleagues, but an earlier colleague, Mr. President, identified the issue being potentially a parochial issue. And you'd think that the last person who's the new guy in would be in favor of a parochial issue, but I am in this circumstance. And I say that after I've weighed this in talking with several police and firefighters, and also after speaking with the mayor directly, and in speaking with my colleagues. Let me also start off by saying that I've never felt safer in my life.
Right now or in general?
ever. And I think that that's a testament to, as one of my earlier colleagues had mentioned, of hitting above our weight class. And everyone in this room, from the mayor to all of her staff, to every single cabinet position, to every single counselor in this room, I don't think to a person, we all respect and are indebted to each and every one of the people here who serve on our fire and police departments. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't feel safe without you. What I keep going back to is that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I appreciate and understand there's nothing but positive and good faith intentions by the administration in attempting to solve the problem of civil service. It is a flawed system. There's no way to defend it other than it being a flawed system. But it's not for this body to make that decision. It's for Senator Lovely and for Representative Keenan or Representative Keenan's successor to help lead that charge down in Boston in making those changes. That's not for us to decide. If we were to take our chiefs out of civil service, the only way that I could start to get my brain around it would be to have that discussion when we're not potentially facing the possibility of a pending vacancy. If we're going to address it, let's address it after the vacancy takes place. So if for some reason within this next year, if there's a vacancy on the police department, for example, if you're wanting to address this as an administration, it should be after that, because we already have people in the pipeline who are qualified and ready to go and are supported by the other brothers and sisters within the police department. And part of that discussion, when it goes forward, one of the things that Mayor Driscoll indicated within her presentation was delivering the current civil service system, which just says mayor, as to who is part of that. And then under the proposal for the ordinance, it's a list of all these different people. We need to have that discussion with all those different people together first before we suggest going out of civil service or having a new ordinance for some sort of replacement for the city. That to me would be the more appropriate sequence of events in terms of getting that done. Any other cogent points? Everyone else has really addressed. I think the people who came up and spoke have addressed some of my. I share the concerns that have been raised. What I would suggest, and I would agree with the proposal, I think we need to actually vote down this petition now. And if this is something that we as a body want to take up next year, that's certainly something that we can do. But I don't think that the men and women of the police force need to be under the stress. I think that the lieutenant was identifying. They don't need to be under the stress and the continued stress. If we want to have further discussions or a public hearing later on, that's fine, but let's move on. We need to vote this down, whether it's tonight or tomorrow, I'm not sure in terms of procedure. But let's vote it down and let's continue with civil service. And then, if we want to talk about successor entities or a successor plan, let's do it together, but let's do it next year.
Councilor Milo. Did you have a hand up?
I think. Oh, no.
He didn't have his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wasn't going around the room. I was going by hands.
Oh, that's good, yeah. I'm also going to stand up because one of the reasons is this is a really, really, really important issue for me. Excuse me. For me, it is about safety. and it is about getting the best person for the job. Let me just back up a little bit, because I've been doing a lot of research on this over the past few weeks, and one of the things I've discovered through my research, and it might be a minor point, but I just kind of want to clarify it. There's a lot of talk of this 75% of the towns and cities in Massachusetts have taken the positions out of civil service. If you go online and you look at the 55 communities in the state that have city designation, that are probably very similar, a lot of them are very similar communities to Salem. 48 of those 55 cities still have their chiefs in the civil service system. And I think that does say something. So I just wanted to get that out there. But as I said, for me, it is about safety. And it is about getting the best person for the job. And, you know, that term is somewhat subjective, I think. But for me, I have a very specific criteria for the best person for these two positions. And the criteria would be not necessarily what we see on paper, although that's a consideration for the best person for the job. But for me, the criteria would be someone who's come up through the ranks, someone who knows the city, someone who knows the residents in the city, someone who knows the strengths and the weaknesses, and I know that's been mentioned earlier this evening, but knows the strengths and the weaknesses of the men and women they serve with, so that when they're going into that burning house, they know the best person to enter. They know the best person to get the water to the fire. They know the best person to search the house. And that, to me, is all about safety. Those are the important things. And I know in my heart, and I know intellectually, that we have those people here. I really, truly, truly believe that. And I think that we need to just keep this in the civil service system. I don't believe we need, at least certainly for me, I have done enough internal debate with myself. I don't feel that it needs to be discussed any further. I think the testimony that's been brought this evening is certainly beyond sufficient, and I believe that my fellow counselors have done their research, and I believe we should keep it in, and I believe we should take a vote on it.
Is it okay?
Council Sergeant.
Thank you, Mr.
And for
President.
the record, you're very tan.
Thank you. No, I don't know, I forgot what I was talking about. I believe I have to divulge that I have two brother-in-laws that are firefighters before we go forward. Just want to make sure I'm okay with the city, you know. Right, okay, thank you. All right. I just got to tell you, I was very surprised when I read about Peabody doing this. If they had talked about getting rid of civil service, I would have been disappointed also. But when they just talked about getting rid of the chief, I just couldn't figure out why you have a system where it works from the beginning all the way to the 97th%, and then the last 3% or so it doesn't work. How can we have a system that gets everything done all the way up through, gets everybody tested, hired, trained, and all of a sudden it's not the right system for the most important person in the system? That just didn't make sense to me. Now, and I'm going to get to almost my ending first. If we put in a system in place to stop new hirees based on nepotism, favoritism, political favors, having new firefighters come on board because they held signs for me at election time and I had some influence to get them hired, we put in a system to stop that. Why wouldn't we have a system that stops that from happening at the top? And the way that can happen isn't any mayor's fault or any certain person's fault. But you have a very good job that pays well. And if you have police chiefs around the country say, gee, Salem's got a great police force. Fire chiefs around Salem's got a great place to go. I'd like to be there. And the same as some Salem police chief wanted to move to Florida. I wouldn't want them stepping in front of every guy that made his way up through the ranks in some city in Florida. But now comes the possibility, just like a new hiree. where somebody that's done great work for the Democratic Party can have a governor come in and say, you know what, I got a friend that's a very qualified chief of either police or fire, and you have an opening, and he needs a job. And that person steps in front of a Salem man or woman who spent most of their life here, and that don't mean you have to be born in Salem, but as a Salem person that's put their way up through the system, and all of a sudden, everything we put in place to train them, and somebody goes stepping forward. And I believe that somebody at the top should know what the guys below him are talking about. Whether it's bringing a young person along that you want to train, or is having difficulty, or isn't quite getting something, or one of your lieutenants or captains. You should know, and you should have walked in their shoes. You should have walked through the hallways they walk in, walked on the rooftops they've walked on when they've been on fire, ran down those alleyways and over those fences that the police chief's run over, and I know he has, and run down. You should know what that person is talking about. You should know what that person is going through. And you can help train that person along to become the best policeman or firefighter they should be. You just can't come walking in. If you grade this two ways, one is knowledge of being a policeman or a firefighter. Somebody coming in can have 100%. But you average in the second way. Knowledge of Salem and the job in Salem and the streets and the people and the neighborhoods and the contacts you've made in Salem, that person gets a 0. So even if they have 100, their average is 50. We have a system that's set in place with it. We have a 20-year race that starts at the beginning from some of these young guys around here. And during those 20 years, they're vetted by the civil service system. It's not just coming up by seniority. They have to pass the sergeant's test. If you ever seen anybody study for these lieutenants and captain's tests, that's the equivalent of an associate's degree, the amount of hours they put in there. And they've done all that work. And now, to me, the person who should be in line for that job are the captains that have made their way all the way up to the second most important position. Because they've done the work, they've been in the race, and now comes the end of the race and you're going to say someone's going to step in line in front of you. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem fair to me. And I'll tell you one other thing to prove a point. To prove that what many people have said tonight, that Salem leads, we don't follow. If we vote this down, at meetings like this all around the state, people will be saying, Salem voted this down. And they'll have a good chance of voting it down also, because they'll follow our lead. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor Gerard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you.
No problem.
You know, I would echo a lot of what other people have said tonight, but I have to say, of all the conversations that I had, and I've spoken with a lot of people, first with Ray, then with Jim, I spoke with the chief of Reading, I spoke with a family friend who's a police officer in Revere, spoken with the former chief in Marblehead, and they've all pretty much said the same thing. I will say Reading had something pretty interesting, that the way that they voted, or the way that they explained this to me, was that with civil service you come out the way you went in, so they had to vote it out by town meeting. But what they said was that they would take it out after the position was filled. And so the chief sitting there, he's a civil service chief, and I just thought that was unique. But something that in all my conversations that I just keep going back to every time I look over everything, that I just, what Ray said to me, that he said he's not going to work, he's going to what he's supposed to be. And when I think about my police and my fire folks, I want them to feel secure in taking care of us. And so that's why I have a hard time supporting this.
No? Council Famico.
All right, so I'm Heather Famico. I need to also say I have a second cousin as well as a relative on the fire department, and that will be put forth before the meeting tomorrow night. Should also say, if you look at leadership today, and I know all of you have gone through civil service, leadership today is a lot different than it was in the 1880s. It's a lot different than it was in the early 1900s, but it's also a lot different than it was in even, say, 1990. In the last bit of time, a lot of changes has happened as far as what we're requiring of our different forces. If you even look at the ordinance that's proposed in front of us, it includes part of it, does the person going before us have experience for budget? Do they have experience in information technology? And also in innovations in police operations? In my own line of work, I should say by day I'm a teacher. At our school, we just hired a principal from outside of the district. The reason is she had experience in these very things that someone from within could not do, or didn't have the experience having. Additionally, she went on and furthered herself through different trainings, different coursework, and kept pushing herself to the next level. I don't know all of your stories, but I don't know if any of you, when you were a child, said, I want to be chief when I grow up. I know a lot of you may have said, I want to be a firefighter, or I'd like to be a police officer. But as far as a chief, or any high-level position, it doesn't matter what it is. I understand that for the police and fire, you are putting your safety on the line. You are protecting the citizens, whether it be your families or strangers you've never even seen before. It could be a person that you know from their neighborhood, or someone that just happened to come in dressed as who knows what for Halloween. But no matter what for these positions, it's someone that's seeking for it. They're seeking out the opportunities. They're seeking to be the very best. It doesn't necessarily have to be an exam. If any of you have taken the SATs or ACTs, I don't think that's a true testament of where someone is. And while I realize that we have the assessment centers,